Well, I'm very excited to be here. It's my first time at an ALPS conference. I took the overnight flight from Canada, so if I'm a little groggy, you'll understand why. It's really a privilege to speak to this audience because we work closely with publishers of all types, and we feel publishers are a very, very key part of our ecosystem and of the research environment. So today I want to discuss with you, share with you the results, or the interim results of a collaboration between the library and the press at the University of Ottawa to encourage broad dissemination of our works through a Gold OA partnership. And I can start by saying that we feel strongly that the library and the University Press share common goals in disseminating scholarly works to enrich intellectual discourse and to enhance the reputation of the university. So I will describe this partnership, and it is a work in progress, but I think you'll see that it is quite innovative, and I think it does raise a lot of questions. So the University of Ottawa is the capital of Canada. There's a few slides here. On the bottom right, you can see a wintry scene. That's the Rideau Canal, the world's longest skating rink, and if you come in winter, you can skate down that canal. It's not always freezing cold, so if you come in winter, you may enjoy that. It's Parliament, and that's one of our main buildings on campus. So I will briefly give you a snapshot of the university, the library, the press, the publishing program of the press, and then I'll discuss the partnership agreement that we have with the press and the next steps that we see in this project. So University of Ottawa, it's the world's largest bilingual university, English and French, which we're quite proud of. It's one of Canada's top 10 research institutions in terms of research intensity, the funding we receive from the main granting agencies in Canada. About 43,000 students. It's about 2/3, 1/3 split between Anglophone and Francophone students. We have 10 faculties, so we cover all the major professional and non-professional disciplines. We have 4 libraries across the campus, about 160 staff, and our materials budget is about $15 million. Just a very brief snapshot to situate the context of this project. The press was founded about 60 years ago. It's the only bilingual university press in Canada and the oldest French press in North America. You can see the mission, which probably looks very similar to the missions of other university presses in Canada, the US, and probably here as well, to enrich intellectual cultural life, to the publication and dissemination of scholarly works, and to extend the reach and influence of the University of Ottawa. We publish about 23 books per year. We try to balance that linguistically between English and French. It's not always easy, but we do make it work fairly well, and this year it'll be 10 books in French, 13 in English. There's a management board that includes the University Librarian. There's an editorial board that includes myself. And so the press and the library have a very close interrelationship at the management and editorial level. Publishing formats, you can see them here. Annual sales, roughly 300,000 Canadian, and simultaneous print and e-publication is a key feature of the publishing model. In terms of sales, online books represents about 10% of revenue. That seems to be growing a little bit every year, but I think 10% is pretty much a benchmark with many other university presses in North America and perhaps on this side of the pond as well. So here we see the collections. What you see in orange are the main strategic areas of focus of the publishing program, so where we have key strategic areas of emphasis: Francophone and Canadian studies, politics, public policy, and globalization. Being situated in the capital, this is a natural strength of ours, and contemporary society. Then we have the names of the different collections, and each collection has its own director, and each director is responsible for the quality and the intellectual coherence of each collection. I should mention as well that the University of Ottawa Press embraced Green OA in 2009-2010 when the university launched an open access program and has released about 58 titles, backlist titles as open access titles freely available through our consortial platform, which is in Toronto. Now the question is, of course, it's one thing to release backlist titles, it's a whole different issue to release frontlist titles, because that's where the revenue stream is, that's where the heart of the business model lies. The key distributors for print and electronic, I think you'll probably recognize all or most of these. We're really making a concerted effort to move into new markets in Europe, in the US, for distribution and marketing for print and e. So the Open Access Funding Partnership, as I mentioned, the university put forward an open access program in 2009-2010, and in relation to that, the University Library and the press thought long and hard about how we could really put together a strategy to really kickstart a new approach to working towards achieving the goals of open access while not doing something ruinous to the bottom line of the press, and doing it in a way that would not really commit ourselves in a long-term basis to fund open access, but to do it on a more targeted experimental basis. So what we have is a 3-year agreement to support the open dissemination, which means Gold OA Creative Commons license of selected new monographs. Key features, what it means is that the library subsidizes a maximum of 3 titles per year, and the collection that was mainly targeted was the law, technology, and media collection, largely because we felt these are titles that really have contemporary core social relevance. These are titles on copyrights and homelessness, as I'll show you in a second, titles which we think will have much broader appeal than titles in, say, philosophy or religious studies, which have a more narrower niche appeal. Now, one of the key features of the agreement is that the press has to provide the library with a P&L statement of the economics of publishing a new book, so we can see what is the shortfall that's needed to publish that book as Gold OA. So when a new book is proposed, I receive that P&L statement, and then I can see how much money is actually needed, up to a maximum of $10,000, to be able to defray the cost of production, to be able to enable it to be published as Gold OA. So really, it's a way to really try out a new approach without really going too far into really providing funding that would really be on too large a basis or in too much that would commit us too far into the future. It's really limited to a 3-year project, and our goal is really to assess this project in terms of sales, in terms of downloads, the impact on dissemination of these titles, and what that means for the open access strategy of the press. These are the titles that were selected, and you can see that most of them really have a very direct social, political, cultural emphasis: homelessness, copyrights, sexual assault. So there's a few that have been published, the top 5, and there's 3 that are forthcoming, and 1 that hasn't been selected yet. Now this is some preliminary data, but I think you'll find this rather interesting. These are titles that were published as Gold OA, and you can see that the second column of copies sold. What strikes me is that there's still a market for print for these titles. There's still a market for ebooks, even though these titles are available as Gold OA titles. And you can see the column second from right, downloads from the IR. There's a significant number of downloads, many page views numbering in hundreds or even thousands, many clicks on the press site. But there's still that mixed environment where we see that Gold OA doesn't mean that print sales cease or the ebook sales cease. So this is really going to play into the conversation we have once the project ends, and once we sit back and look at the results in terms of impact, value to the community, value to the university, and we try to figure out where we go on a more sustainable basis, because obviously we wouldn't be able to bankroll all publications of the press on an ongoing basis. This is very much a pilot to experiment with what Gold OA could mean on a monograph side of things. So we are one of 4 presses to really be in the forefront of open access strategies and thinking. And we intend to carry this forward to the next year when this agreement will end, and we'll then have data going forward on all of the titles. We'll be able to then see, perhaps the year after, when we see the impact of the first year, what that means in terms of developing a broader open access strategy for the press in relation to the university's goals. So it's a question then of assessing the project. We'll be consulting with stakeholders and just looking at what this experiment means in the broader framework of the financing of scholarly communications in a very challenging, very robust period where there's so much experimentation, especially on the monograph side, where it is so much more complex to try to imagine an environment where open access really can be as sustainable as we'd like it to be, just because we know there's so many challenges on the distribution side, on the economic side, and on other dimensions as well. So essentially it's a question of going forward and assessing this with the university stakeholders and examining where we go in terms of a broader open access strategy, which this will be one component. All right, so that's what I wanted to share with you. I think my key message here is that here's an example of a University Press and University Library that really are working very closely together in terms of editorial direction, financial implications, economic directions in relation to university-wide goals around the broader dissemination of scholarly communications and what it means for this partnership, and just what it could mean going forward in terms of what support, both financial and in terms of infrastructure, that the expertise that the library can provide. So I will leave it at that.
So we have a few minutes if there are a couple of questions from the audience, and then of course we'll have time for more general discussion. Yes.
Mark Ware. Very interesting. Thanks very much for sharing some of that data in particular. You describe it as a partnership, and what I don't quite understand is where the partnership comes in. I understand you're taking money out of the library budget and using it to subsidize press activity, but that money could have come out of anybody's budget, presumably. So I'm just wondering, what is it that makes this a partnership, and what is the library expertise that makes that different from taking money from any other budget within the university?
Well, I think this speaks to the role that libraries are playing in scholarly communications. We have a scholarly communications librarian who manages an open access authors fund, who manages our institutional repository, and who really works with the press to ensure that these books are made available through the repository, who works with faculty to really educate them on all the complexities around giving up copyrights through copyright transfer agreements, and basically ensuring that they can understand what role the library can play in the whole life cycle of research. So that's one piece, but as well on the management side, the University Librarian sits on the management board, so has a direct role in the management of the press, the production side, or the business model that's being developed over time. As well, I sit on the editorial board, so I have a role in defining how we determine the structure of our collections and our strategic directions, and looking at what that means from the common values that we share around disseminating information broadly, and ensuring that we can build upon each other's knowledge and expertise. So it's around those areas, really, that we see that partnership.
Hello, I'm Frances Pinter, Manchester University Press, and also Knowledge Unlatched. I'm over here if you're looking for me.
Oh, yes. Hi.
I have a question about the pricing of the print and e. Did the fact that the origination costs were underwritten affect the price? Did it bring the price of the print and e down, or were you just using the price that you would have published it at for full cost recovery?
We were using the price that would have been applied, would have been determined even without this program being in place. So there are price points for different types of books based on the market and what the press feels is an appropriate balancing point between revenue and not inhibiting sales. So the subsidy is a factor, but it didn't really play into the actual retail price for the books themselves.
I think we can do one more question, and then we can save the remainder for the general discussion. Ian? Sorry, making it as difficult as possible.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. Ian Russell from Oxford University Press. Thanks for that, Tony. I just wondered if we could return to the key data that you put up.
Sure.
And I had a question
Sure.
as to whether there was, I didn't see much of a correlation between, I mean, actually looking at it, perhaps there is, but the sort of clicks on the press and the downloads and the page visits, they kind of seem a little bit all over the park and not necessarily correlated to the copy sold. Is there a story, is there a backstory there?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that. Essentially, on the press site, there's a link that says download this site from the institutional repository. Then they're sent over to the library's institutional repository. So this just to give you a sense of the scale of the number of people that land on the University of Ottawa press page, and then how many actually go to the institutional repository and then decide, yes, I want this book, and decide to download it. It's just to give you a sense of the scale.
All right, great. I think we'll go on to Jill now. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.